Hello, you're watching Smart Money, and joining me in conversation today is David Buckham. He's founder and CEO of Monocle Solutions. Welcome, David. And what a time to be in the management consulting business, right? Because you help companies navigate all kinds of complexity by advising on developing and implementing strategy and solutions to improve operational processes and overall performance and profitability at the end of the day. And, volatile economic and political environments aside, you're doing this in the age of AI. So give us your sense of the current operating environment and some of the changes, the kind of evolution business and industries are having to keep up with.
Alishia, thank you so much for having me on Daily Investor. No, it's crazy times. We went on holiday in December and we come back and we've got exceptionally bad relations with the US suddenly. We're cast out of the global network by the US. We face enormous challenges, particularly in the banking sector, with being on the grey list. And there's a fight over resources in Africa. And then AI has risen and become a very powerful narrative of change, which could potentially radically transform organizations and the way we work. So organizations are really struggling with this, and it brings with it many risks, such as cyber attacks, geopolitical risks, certain markets or certain companies may become irrelevant. As you know, just the single announcement of a Chinese AI development, DeepSeek, significantly changed the value of NVIDIA. It went down $600 billion in a day. So we live in fascinating times. Personally, I love it. I thrive on this change. I think we always have as Monocle. It's a wonderful time to be alive and to be consulted.
Well, change management is your speciality, right? And there's certainly no sign, David, of things slowing down. In fact, upping the ante, and I'll get to the politics of it all in the latter part of the conversation, but upping the ante right now, quantum computing, because it could further transform the world as we know it, processing information faster than we've ever known, making computing as efficient and as powerful as possible. So break that down for us. What are we looking at, pros and cons, and how much of a game changer?
So let me quickly explain to viewers what quantum computing is. So first of all, computers are made up of bits, which are electrodes that are either on or off. So you can convert any number into a binary number, and therefore computers can process. So we have integrated circuits, which are billions of electrodes fashioned together into a chip. Now, quantum computing is the idea that instead of having an on or off in a bit, you have a probabilistic range between 0 and 1 that can all take place simultaneously in a single instant on a single electrode, which is a quantum electrode called a qubit. So this has been a kind of science fiction idea for many, many decades. Even when, I was reading science fiction comics when I was a kid, in apartheid South Africa, wondering about quantum computing. It seemed very, very far away. Now, very recently, a number of companies, including Microsoft, have made announcements that they've made great leaps forward in terms of quantum computing, and that it's around the corner. And I believe quite strongly that it's a narrative that's been propagated by large big tech firms that's not necessarily true, but is one that is theoretically viable but unlikely to be true. Because were it to be true, it would completely, more so than AI, transform computing. It would transform all kinds of security. All encryption is based on very large prime numbers to the power of very large prime numbers. What are called one-way cryptographic functions. So were quantum computing to suddenly be around the corner, It would nullify the need for energy to run computers because computers would run extremely efficiently. It would be sort of, it would destroy all encryption, including encryption on missiles and nuclear reactors and nuclear weapons, and it would destroy privacy. So it's not that it's a bad thing. It's not that I don't like it. It's that I doubt the validity that it's around the corner.
Or that we're possibly ready for it.
We're definitely not ready for it. It's whoever gets it will be like the bad guy in 007. You know, it'll be like Mr. Q or what's the Dr. No. It would be like the Dr. No. It would be the secret to the universe, more so than AI. There's an argument that people are having at the moment about AI nullifies the necessity for quantum computing. I disagree with that. Quantum computing would radically change everything because it would mean that we could solve complex problems instantaneously. And it really is a science fiction idea.
So take us back to that timeline, David, because like you say, there are mixed messages, right, around these timelines. I mean, we've got anything from decades away to years away to more specifically as soon as 2029. So how far away do you think we are? Because some are highlighting that, the challenges, as you've just done, to practically realizing usable quantum computing are really being downplayed at this point.
Yes. So I'm going to refer to a story where the U.S. Energy Department in California made an announcement about 2-3 years ago that they had achieved nuclear fusion. And nuclear fusion would basically mean free power without any carbon, fossil fuel, or any need for fossil fuel. And people have been working on nuclear fusion for many, many, many years, for decades. And it's still far away. But the announcement was nevertheless made by an official from the U.S. Department of Energy, and it turned out to be true that for an instant, nuclear fusion was achieved, but the amount of energy put in by lasers to achieve it was far greater than the output of energy. So it's part of the what I call the spell, which are these pseudo-scientific narratives that are propagated by governments and institutions, that we're at an inflection point in history and that the next big thing is about to occur. We're so lucky to be alive today. But the truth is that these are experiments taking place in laboratories and misinterpreted by politicians that are taking scientific information and not propagating the correct message. And I believe the same is about quantum computing, because the fact that a particular large big tech firm has got a lab that says that 5 years from now they might be able to develop the first qubit. Remember, that's one qubit. We need billions of them. So to practically create a qubit that's usable, I believe, is very far away. And so do many other people, including the NVIDIA CEO, Jensen Huang. But remember that it's in his best interest to say that quantum computing is far away, because they sell graphic processing unit, which are what we use to do AI. So I'm asking sort of the reader of, I wrote an article about this called Quantum Computing and Godmother's Milk and Honey, which is to say that we are regularly fed these very exciting narratives that we're around the corner of achieving something which is what I call supranational, meaning it's above government. It gives us individual rights, such as blockchain and such as robotic process engineering, and that it drives the market value of stocks.
Exactly. And that's exactly what I was going to ask you. Do we take it as far as saying this is the next big thing that starts to perhaps rationalize these tech firms' high PE multiples as the Gen AI narrative gets replaced with, this new fresh one highlighting the power of big tech companies in the global economy?
Exactly. It's no coincidence to me that the big announcements have occurred recently as the wind was taken out of the sails of the Gen AI narrative. So after the election of Trump, you saw the market, roughly speaking, correct down 10%. And we've seen Elon Musk complaining about the fact that Tesla's half of its value and people are burning Teslas. And the order book, this was interesting for me, Alishia, the order book for Teslas in Germany is 78% down on last year. So there's these challenges to the Gen AI narrative or the electric vehicle narrative. And so the narrative has to be replaced with a new narrative. And what could be more exciting than going to Mars and nuclear fusion and, of course, quantum computing? But of all of them, in my opinion, the one that will occur first, we'll probably go to Mars before we achieve nuclear fusion. And probably we'll achieve nuclear fusion in some kind of form before we achieve quantum computing. That's my layperson's prediction.
Look, amidst it all, David, some have gone as far as saying that the world's largest businesses are wielding power comparable to that held by many governments, right? Are you seeing the increased power of the private sector as a positive or as a negative for investors?
Well, for investors that are buying into a market where the average price earnings multiple, the weighted average price earnings multiple of the S&P 500 is something around 25, where the 120-year average is 18. And the largest company on earth is Apple, which sells a product that most of us already own. I would say that the power wielded by these companies is dangerous in that it must ultimately, according to economic history that we all have studied at university and that we all inherently know, there must be a major correction coming. So somewhere in the next 6 months, there must be a major correction, unless I'm wrong. And I'm not in a position to give investment advice because I'm not a registered investment advisor. But if someone asked me, like yourself, just my opinion, there must be a major correction. We don't see markets this elevated for so long. I don't like the fact that tech companies are able to bully governments and are able to wield so much power. And that's where you see the European governments fighting against the American big tech companies. But overall, for investors, the big warning for me would be that the market is overpriced.
So that's what you're pricing in on global markets. So if we bring South Africa into this, because South Africa is certainly not being left out of it, current rhetoric, as you've said, between the US and South Africa front and center, what are you pricing in locally amidst this, this geopolitical tension that's rife right now?
So the problem that we have in South Africa is that a few big stocks, which I won't name them, but I mean most of your listeners will know them, are constituting 80 to 85% of the market, and one of them is very tied to a Chinese tech stock, and others of them are tied to media business, and some are tied to. So not many of our stocks are highly, highly dependent on the US markets. But having said that, when the US markets correct, markets around the world correct. So I would say that stock markets in general, equity markets in general, I would be net negative on equity markets in general for the foreseeable future, particularly because we still haven't seen the effect, the Trump effect taking place, meaning the effect of the tariffs slowing business down because of the uncertainty.
So perhaps ending off a bit more controversially, if you were in a position of power in the South African government, David, how would you handle the current situation between South Africa and the US? Because ultimately, as you ended off there, it impacts building and growing successful companies.
100%. I would intervene immediately. I would send a delegation to the US begging forgiveness, and I would ask America to please not write us off as a country because of some comments made by one diplomat that weren't very diplomatic. And I would attempt to rekindle a relationship with America, because America is absolutely critical to our economy and to the world economy. We don't have that many exports to America. People argue this, but they're blind to the fact that America is the world economy divided by two. I mean, half of the world's listed entities, their value is America. So we need America more than they need us, and we're not behaving very smartly towards them. We need to beg their forgiveness and to get them back onto a diplomatic footing, 100%.
David, let's leave it there. Thanks so much for having joined us on Smart Money today. David Buckham is founder and CEO of Monocle Solutions.